One evening, Daniel stood in line at the grocery store with his 7-year-old daughter, Emily, clutching his hand tightly. The fluorescent lights above hummed softly, the air carried that familiar blend of bread, soap, and detergent. It was just another routine shopping trip, nothing out of the ordinary, until he reached the checkout counter. The cashier, a young woman with tired but kind eyes, greeted him with a polite smile. She was probably in her early 20s, her hands moving quickly as she scanned each item. But Daniel noticed something unusual. There was a faint smell around her, sharp and heavy, the unmistakable scent of smoke. Not perfume, not food, but cigarette smoke. Emily wrinkled her nose slightly, leaning closer to her father. Daniel tried to ignore it at first, but the curiosity grew inside him. He wasn't the type to pry into strangers' lives, but something about her made him pause. She had a quiet gentleness, and her smile seemed forced, as though it was hiding a weight only she carried. And so, against his usual reserved nature, he asked softly, almost hesitantly, "Why do you smell like smoke?" The question slipped out before he could stop himself. Emily turned to him, wide-eyed, embarrassed by her father's bluntness. The cashier's hands froze mid-scan. For a moment, Daniel wished he hadn't asked. But then she lifted her eyes to his, and the look in them was something he would never forget. There was no irritation, no defensiveness, only sadness. She let out a small breath and whispered, "It's not what you think." The line behind Daniel grew restless, but in that moment, it felt like the world had slowed down. The young woman's name tag read, Sophie. Her voice shook slightly as she continued, "I don't smoke. The smell, it's from the fire at home." Daniel's heart sank instantly. He hadn't expected that. Sophie bit her lip and went on, her words stumbling out quietly but firmly. "Our house burned down last month. We're staying at a shelter. My clothes, my things, they all carry the smell no matter how much I wash them. I don't have enough to buy new ones yet." Daniel's throat tightened. He glanced down at Emily, who was staring at Sophie with wide, sympathetic eyes. The girl's innocence seemed to understand before Daniel could even process it. Sophie's hands moved mechanically again as she finished scanning the groceries. But Daniel noticed the slight tremble in her fingers, the way she quickly looked down to avoid meeting anyone's gaze. She was embarrassed, maybe even ashamed, but more than that, she was exhausted. Daniel carried his bags out to the car in silence, but his mind wouldn't let go of Sophie's words. He couldn't stop picturing her trying to sleep in a crowded shelter, her few belongings stained with smoke, waking up every morning to put on clothes that reminded her of what she'd lost. And yet, there she was, standing behind a counter with a forced smile, serving strangers who had no idea what she was carrying. That night, as Daniel tucked Emily into bed, she looked up at him and whispered, "Daddy, can we help her?" The simplicity of her question cut through him like glass. He had been so wrapped up in his own struggles, being a single father, working 2 jobs, trying to fill the gap left by the wife he had lost 3 years ago, that he sometimes forgot kindness didn't require much. It just required a willing heart. The next morning, Daniel returned to the store. He waited until Sophie's shift ended and gently approached her in the parking lot. She looked startled at first, maybe even worried, but Daniel quickly reassured her. "I didn't mean to make you uncomfortable yesterday," he said softly. "But I wanted you to know, my daughter and I were thinking about you." He handed her a small bag. Inside were a couple of clean sweaters, Emily's favorite scarf, and some toiletries. Nothing expensive, nothing grand. But it was something. Sophie's eyes filled with tears the moment she peeked inside. She shook her head, trying to give it back. "I can't accept this. You've got your own family to take care of." Daniel gently closed her hand around the bag. "Everyone needs help sometimes," he replied. "I know what it feels like to lose everything. I lost my wife, and for a long time, I felt like I couldn't breathe. But people helped me. They reminded me that I wasn't alone. Let us do the same for you." For the first time since he had met her, Sophie's smile wasn't forced. It was soft, fragile, but real. She whispered, "Thank you. You don't know what this means." What began as a simple act of kindness slowly grew into something larger. Over the next weeks, Daniel and Emily visited Sophie regularly. Sometimes they brought extra meals, sometimes just sat with her to talk. Emily adored her, and Sophie, in turn, found comfort in the little girl's pure heart. She started to laugh again, her eyes shining brighter with every passing day. Daniel realized that the question he had asked in a moment of curiosity had opened a door neither of them expected. A bond formed out of ashes and pain, built not on pity but on shared humanity. And in that bond, Sophie found the courage to start over. With Daniel's quiet support, she applied for assistance programs, found a small apartment, and began rebuilding her life piece by piece. Months later, Daniel walked into the grocery store again. This time, Sophie was behind the counter wearing a crisp, clean uniform with no trace of smoke. She looked at him and Emily, her smile wide and genuine. "Smells better now, doesn't it?" she teased softly. Daniel chuckled, but behind his laugh was a lump in his throat. He realized then that sometimes the simplest questions can change everything. His curiosity had uncovered a story of loss, but his daughter's compassion had transformed it into a story of hope. And as they left the store that day, Emily squeezed his hand and whispered, "Daddy, I think we made a difference." Daniel looked down at her, his heart full. "We did, sweetheart, we really did." The message was clear. Behind every tired smile, every quiet stranger, there is a story. And sometimes, asking one small question, and choosing to care about the answer, can light a fire that brings someone out of the darkest smoke.